Welcome to another episode of Pick Up and Play, folks. My name is DJ Switch, and before we get into my guest this week, I want to just have a quick conversation with you all regarding this podcast. I have to apologize. I know this episode is a couple of days late. I'm going to be probably playing around with the scheduling a little bit. It's still going to be a weekly show, but my weekends have been getting very hectic as I've gotten busier over the last few weeks, and that will not be slowing down for at least another month, maybe two. So I'm going to be doing my best to get the show out every single week. But if you want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, I strongly suggest subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of my uploads. Of course, hit the bell, make sure you get your notifications and all that stuff. But not only does it help me a lot because I'm still fighting with some of my old subscribers falling off because I didn't used to make this kind of content. And it's this weird thing where I'm just hovering around the same number of subscribers. The same number of people that fall off every week are the same number that subscribe every week. And so it's like, slowly but surely I'm getting more folks that are watching the podcast and less folks that are, hanging on to the old content that I'm not making anymore. But if any of you folks are listening to this show and haven't subscribed yet, subscribing would massively help me out because it helps stabilize the channel and it helps me continue to be able to build what I'm trying to build here with the podcast. And it costs you absolutely nothing to be a massive part of that. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody that's subscribed already. Thank you to everyone who is even considering subscribing. In fact, just the fact that you're watching this now is truly meaningful to me, and I really do appreciate it. But with that being said, I've got to tell you about my guest this week. My guest is Ryan Berger. He was the publisher from Mobile Beat Magazine, which any DJ knows is a massive outlet in the DJ community for many years. However, Ryan transitioned into publishing his newer magazine project called Old School Gamer Magazine in the late 2010s, before the thing that happened in 2020. And so Ryan is still doing shows. He's still going to gaming expos and conventions and telling people all about his magazine, Old School Gamer. And I was fortunate enough not only to be one of the first people who met Ryan right after he started the magazine and got one of the first copies of the magazine when they launched it at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And I believe it was 2017 or 2018. It was one of those years. And I think for Ryan and I both, it was a little fuzzy because obviously the last 4 years have been absolutely insane. I do remember that first time meeting Ryan in the DJ booth, having a conversation with him about his magazine. And, of course that does come up during the conversation today on the podcast. So, I'm not going to spoil anything else for you all. I just would like you to please enjoy my conversation with Ryan Berger from Old School Gamer Magazine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. This should be fun. Let's talk about all kinds of DJ stuff, video game stuff, Portland stuff, maybe Iowa stuff. I can tell you a little bit about where I live in Iowa. So
Iowa, where's that?
What?
Is that a state? What's Iowa?
It's one of the states you fly over when you're about to get to Chicago.
Right.
It probably lasts about 15 minutes underneath your plane. It's the state I live in. It's known for corn. It's known for political stuff, with debates and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's well known for. Field of Dreams is here. Our state fair is the Awesome State Fair. Corn and beans. How's that sound?
Well, welcome everyone to the Iowa podcast. We're going to learn all about the state of Iowa today, and we're just going to forego the video game conversation. No, Ryan, hey. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out today, man, because I know that like you've had a lot going on this last week, especially. You were at Classic Games Fest?
Classic Game Fest, very cool event. I'd put it in the top 5 along with your buddies up in Portland, my friends at the Long Island show, and the Milwaukee Midwest Gaming Classic. I'd put it in that group. It's a fun group. They had Nolan Bushnell out there, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Never seen anybody bring anybody of that stature out to one of those shows. I'm sure it cost them a couple quick dollars too.
Well, I mean, I've heard nothing but amazing things about Midwest Gaming Classic. I've heard amazing things about the Long Island show. Actually, Brett Weiss was telling me about the Long Island show, and it sounds like the kind of thing that I definitely need to check out one
Yeah,
of these days.
that's my next show after this. I'm going off to Las Vegas for the Star Trek Super Geeky Live Long and Prosper
Star Trek
convention.
Las Vegas, STLV,
Yep.
yeah.
And then I go home for literally less than 24 hours, and I fly out with my wife to check out the New York touristy scene, then go up to Long Island, go home, then I go back to my day job. My day job is I'm a high school computers teacher, which works out very well with my hobbies. Let's call it that.
So you're out for the summer right now.
I'm out for the
not a lot
summer.
going on with the high school.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I was doing some continuing education stuff just about a half hour ago. Always learning, because I mean, in the math field, math doesn't change much. Science doesn't change much. Art doesn't change much. Even history only progresses. Computers are changing faster than the speed of light. So I'm having to teach these kids. We're having to come up with lessons on AI. We're having to come up with lessons on tell them how to use chatbots and stuff like that correctly. Not just having them write their papers for you, and we can all figure out that you didn't really know it.
Yeah, I can only imagine being a computer instructor at a high school in 2024 is probably as complicated as it's ever been. I know that some of my instructors when I was in high school 20 years ago, specifically my computer class instructors were, even though my dad ran a computer store, like I very much got involved with the computer program at my high school because I loved it, and B, because they were some of the most influential teachers for me. So it's really cool that you're continuing that for today's high school kids.
I have my crowd. I mean, I was full-time publisher, and we'll talk about that separately, but I was a full-time publisher up until basically COVID. I had already started fading out of the disc jockey related magazine stuff, and had faded into making Old School Gamer and became a teacher. I decided I wanted to influence the next generation. So I think the next generation needs a lot of help. Honestly, I'm kind of worried about when they take over.
It's one of those things where, like, the thing that I've learned more and more about today's kids, like the next generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and beyond, they grew up in a time where a lot of the information that they get is from each other via the internet at a speed that the playground could never keep up with when we were kids, right? And so there's absolutely some challenges to that and some hurdles that are coming at today's kids at like you said, at light speed, right? At a speed that we just absolutely cannot keep up with. And so it's interesting to me as, a modern computer teacher who's teaching lessons on things like AI, that you still have this interest in publishing a physical magazine.
It's
in 2024.
We cut trees down, cut them very thinly, and throw ink at them, and then we sell it. I mean, the inspiration for the magazine, I assume that's kind of where you're going with this. The inspiration from the magazine came from no one else was doing it. And maybe that's because they weren't successful at it. There was a couple magazines, Video Game Trader, Video Game Collector, other stuff that people had put out, Retro, if you remember that from the guys in SoCal.
Yeah.
Never got anywhere with it. I had a lot more experience than they did going into it, so I want to take a shot at it. I'm not making any money at it. I'm enjoying myself immensely, though. This last weekend was a freaking blast.
Yeah.
But we wanted to kind of bring back the days of EGM and Nintendo Power and those types of magazines. But from a retro perspective, there's news within the retro community with new stuff coming out, shows going on, new ways of playing your old games. But the majority of things are really about the past. Getting an interview and I've still working on setting it up, but I've been trading emails with the guy who started Babbage's, which eventually becomes GameStop. Guy out of Dallas, Texas. Talk with guys that had arcades in 50 different cities all over the country. Spending time talking with Nolan Bushnell. I mean, I got a private time talking with him. Met Al Alcorn, who made Pong. David Crane. Here's a quick story for you. At the Portland Retro Gaming Show, we have our first issue of the magazine out. Way back in the freaking corner of the floor, David Crane walks up and introduces himself. I'm David Crane. You heard of me?
I remember.
Yeah, I have. And I sat and talked with him for a while this past weekend down there. I mean, Howard Scott Warsaw writes for our magazine.
So, funny thing about that specific story, I remember, so this was 2017?
About there, yeah.
And you came by the DJ booth at the end of the expo. In fact, it was Sunday afternoon. We had shut down the music, and I was working on mustering the energy after 3 days of DJing to try and pack up my cables and gear.
Yep.
And you came by to say hello and told me that David Crane story because it had happened before you came by.
I was, yeah.
It happened earlier in that weekend, or was it earlier that day? Was it the Sunday?
I don't remember, but it just blew me away. Yeah.
But I remember you telling me that story the first time we met, which was like kind of amazing to me, but also like I remember connecting with you, not just on Old School Gamer magazine, but at the time you were also the publisher for Mobile Beat, which is a magazine that I know a little bit about because of my industry. Is a mobile DJ focused magazine, and for folks who aren't familiar with the DJing industry, mobile DJs generally are identified as DJs who do contracts for high school parties, weddings, corporate events. It's like a DJ for hire type. And DJing in itself can mean a lot of different things. I've worked very hard in my career to move myself away from mobile DJing because I did it for almost 20 years. But
I've done 1,000 weddings and 1,000 school dances myself. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Dude, the first 10 years of being a wedding DJ, I at one point sat down and did the math, and I realized that I had taught the chicken dance to over 10,000 people. And that number was probably conservative. That I'm probably underestimating the real number.
Yeah.
And when I had that realization, I thought I need to stop this. This is insanity, and I need to move on with my career, or I'm going to be stuck teaching the chicken dance to another 10,000 people, and I can't have that.
Yeah, and the cha-cha slide and the Cupid shuffle and all those. Those of you that go to weddings, you usually go to maybe 3 or 4 weddings a year. When I was at my prime, I was doing 75 weddings personally, another 100 or so I was involved in. I sold the DJ company off to a great gentleman, Jake Feldman, who bought that. And right a little bit while when we were talking in Portland, I was in the process of selling Mobile Beat. It had faded from the publishing magazine it was in the 90s when I took it over in 2006. And the last DJ conference I was supposed to run was supposed to be March 2020. Spring break. If you connect up some of the things that happened around then, I had one person, that Jake gentleman I mentioned earlier, already in Vegas. I was ready to jump on a plane, and so were about 1,000 DJs. We canceled the show. COVID.
I think people remember what happened in March of 2020. We don't need to get into all of that, but needless to say, it was a very difficult time for DJs.
Yes, the DJ companies, it all stopped.
Yeah.
And brides were wanting their deposits back and all that kind of stuff. So I was in the process of getting out of that when we met. But yeah, I ran a disc jockey website called ProDJ.com for 10 plus years. Purchased the trade magazine, a trade show business called Mobile Beat out of some guys from Rochester, New York. Had a whole life there. I mean, who else can brag about hiring the Village People, Vanilla Ice, Lou Graham, Sir Mix-a-Lot, DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Yeah.
Friends with Cupid, I can get a hold of him. Casper from the Cha-Cha Slide just died. Who else we bring out? Naughty by Nature, CNC Music Factory. I mean, it's a fun life.
I mean, especially when you run one of the bigger media outlets within the industry that sort of affords you some opportunity to connect with people that you may not otherwise be able to. Not everyone in the wedding DJ business can connect with some names like that.
Yeah, but we brought them out for parties at our conventions, and people got to meet them, and they thought that was cool.
Yeah,
and it was neat. The whole goal, it was just for DJs to learn new tricks, how to do wedding receptions, how to work a bridal fair, how a bar mitzvah is different than a bat mitzvah. We taught that stuff at seminars, and we did it in a magazine.
So then
I did that from the age of 16, and I was done. I wanted my weekends back.
So how do you transition then from the DJing life and the magazine publishing life into publishing a gaming magazine? What made you decide to lean into the retro gaming community?
I kicked up Old School Gamer a year or two before I started fading Mobile Beat out. And I brought it up basically because I knew how to do it. No one else was doing it right. And I still wanted to be self-employed. I will never give up self-employment. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It may be a better name for a hobby that doesn't break even, but I'll make some money out of it someday. But it just moves that, and the whole transition to going to teaching all happened around the same time. We were in pretty good financial shape overall with stuff, but I could see things fading.
Yeah.
So I sold the 2 businesses, got into teaching, immensely loved that, and then moved into magazine because I knew how to lay out stuff. I knew how to work with writers. Every industry has its personalities. I mean, count yourself as one of them.
Sure.
I mean, within the retro gaming community, there's 200 people that you'll see at a bunch of the different expos on a regular basis. People I just run into: Brett Weiss, one of Michael Thompson,
Yeah.
Rick from Portland. He shows up at a bunch of different shows. All this, there's personalities and everything. The thing is, in the DJ industry, picture this: these DJs have an even bigger personality just by the nature of what their job is, of being in front of people and directing traffic at a wedding or pressing a thing or doing the chicken dance. It was kind of a relief to get a bit of that stress off my back.
Preacher meat choir.
Yes.
Boy, do I know what you're talking about, man. The DJ, the funny thing about being a performer, and DJs are absolutely, in fact, I would say not only are they not the exception, this probably applies to DJing more than other areas of live performing as a profession that I've seen. The ego thing can really get out of control if you let it. And most of the most successful DJs I know are guys who have really learned how to get control of their ego and be able to humble themselves. And I've got a perfect example. My turntables, if you ever come to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo and you see my turntables, you'll see 2 DJs that have signed my turntables. And the reason for that is because in 2014, I was a turntable tech for the local regional leg of the Red Bull 3-style competition. We drove a few hours south to Eugene, Oregon, and we hosted the West Coast regional championships for the Red Bull 3-style folks. And the showcase DJs ended up using my turntables. So during sound check and setup, I actually asked them, I pulled out a Sharpie and asked both 4Color Zach and DJ Shortcut from the Insane Scratch Pickles to sign my turntables, and they did. They signed both of them. One of them's wearing off a little bit because of where I tend to rest my thumb when I'm riding the platter, but the other one still is just as perfect as it was 10 years ago. And the thing about both those guys is that, and even in the case of 4Color Zach, I even joked with hey man, is this cool? Does this setup work for you? Do you need me to tweak anything or make any adjustments? And he was super chill. He was like, nah, it's cool, man. That totally works. And I was like, you're not gonna pull the Rockstar Diva thing, man? You're not gonna start making all kinds of demands on me? He's like,
the green M&M rule, that kind of stuff.
He goes, nah, it's cool. He was one of the chillest dudes ever. And not only that, but then he proceeded to go on stage and absolutely destroy it. It was incredible what he was able to do on my own personal turntables. And then of course DJ Shortcut, one of the kings of the scratch, right? Dude is absolutely legendary for his work in scratch DJing, and so watching him work my 1200s and do things with them that I probably will never be capable of. It was just amazing to see. So yeah, the whole ego thing, I think, some of the most successful people in any industry, but especially in the DJing industry, that revolves around whether or not you can get your ego in check, man. And that's the thing that I've sort of seen, not like you said, not just in DJing, but the personalities in the gaming world. Some of the egos on folks, if they can get them in check, they go really far. Metal Jesus is a perfect example. That dude is so nice and he is so patient. And anytime I reach out to him or anytime I have an interaction with him, he's so incredibly patient and humble and nice. And he's one of the biggest YouTubers in our scene.
Yeah, to give you another example of someone that's like that, but even Metal Jesus, until you have met him personally, you can't break through a little bit of that. Another person that people be very surprised is, and this is a controversial subject to a degree, Billy Mitchell. Okay, Pac-Man crazy guy with stuff. Let's say he can play the part and be himself very easily of being the asshole, egotistical kind of guy he wants to be. But if you get down and sit and talk with the guy, he's a nice guy on the inside.
Sure.
But again, you got to get past that. And a lot of people only see him playing the part of Billy Mitchell, the Pac-Man player. So
yeah,
there's a tough one. One other thing to mention for you, you're talking about DJs you loved watching. My favorite DJ I ever saw work was Jazzy Jeff.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to see him do an hour or two set, when we had him open up for Sir Mix-a-Lot, oh, that was the best party night we ever had in Vegas.
Interestingly, Jazzy Jeff's road tech, the guy that goes along and does all of the like tech work for his tours, as well as a lot of the behind the scenes video work that he does, is a guy named DJ Zimmy, who was originally from Portland. And Zimmy was hanging out in the green room at that Red Bull event that I did 10 years ago. So I got to hang out with him, chop it up, got his card. Unfortunately, I haven't had reason to use it, because he's constantly on tour and he and I haven't had a chance to cross paths again, but super nice dude. Incredibly humble. And just really cool how like these people who you see on TV or who you see on, these YouTube videos with multi-millions of hits, once you meet them in real life, oftentimes they're incredibly patient, humble, and they have an incredibly calm sense of who they are and the role that they play in their, chosen fields, their chosen niche, as it were.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. There's the point I was trying to make when I went that direction with stuff is it's just the personalities and switching over from the DJ centric personality to the arcade and video game personalities. Yeah, there are some rock stars out there, and some of them deservingly so, that business wise did fantastic on things.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that just drive you nuts.
Sure. And I've met a few of those too. We don't need to name any names here, but the reality is, when anytime you got a room full of personalities, you're going to have a lot of folks that are super nice and humble, and then you're going to have at least a couple folks that aren't. And that's the reality of it, right? But I want to kind of move away from that into talking a little bit more about the magazine specifically, because the idea of a physical release in 2024, physical media, I literally just before we hopped on the call today, I was reading an article from, I think it was Engadget. Let me actually just double check that real fast because I still have it. Oh no, not Engadget. It was Tech Radar. Tech Radar was reporting that there's an outlet in the UK. It's a UK like media retailer called HMV. Yeah. And they're reporting that physical media sales are up 5% in the first half of 2024, specifically with 4K Blu-rays and what they call visual media, which is, Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays, DVDs, that sort of thing. And the representative from HMV, who was quoted in the article, was saying that this should be a wake-up call for the subscription services that have absolutely riddled their subscriptions with ads, raising subscription prices constantly. And people are starting to buy physical media again as a way to sort of push back against that. Do you see the magazine world moving in that same direction? Do you think that there's an attraction to physical media that's starting to cycle back?
I think I'll say this. I expect us to do better, and things to grow with Old School Gamer tremendously, because we are so much a niche. The days of the big, thick newspaper, gone.
Yeah.
Because of stuff. The days of you getting news from a magazine are gone, because it takes a month or at least a couple weeks to get a magazine out. It's not newsworthy. It's documenting the past kind of stuff. And what you're saying about media stuff, yeah, I think people want to own the stuff. As evidence with the prices of physical retro games. I mean, it's just people want to actually own the thing instead of have something that even though they're buying it on the Xbox store or whatever, they're really borrowing it. When they decide to turn it off, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's no other way of getting it out of there. So having physical product is important on things. The problem is even the physical product that you were buying, even the last couple of years, have so many downloads and updates to them, fixing things, that even if you do have the physical disc, you probably still can barely run it. So, I mean, the era of the DLC and all that kind of stuff kind of ruined that vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to see a return, in the other direction, of and it's part of the big reason, and I've talked about this on the show before. Part of the big reason why I'm such a fan of the Switch is not just because they named it after me, but also because the physical carts that you can get for the majority of the library on the Switch. That I like the collectability of that. I also like the reliability of that. As long as the battery holds solid on a Nintendo Switch, I'll be able to play that thing for the next 10, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And you probably will be to a large degree, but there'll be other stuff that'll disappear. That's why people like Premium Edition and Limited Run are taking some of this non-physical stuff and getting them to the physical format, which is great.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that happening.
I think it's really interesting, and especially that you bring up Limited Run, because I've noticed Limited Run, and again, this is all stuff that I've talked about on the show in the past, but like in the early days of Limited Run, I wasn't a fan of their model, but then they eventually switched to an open pre-order model, which I really appreciated, because then, you weren't limited to 3,000 copies or whatever. They could open it up to however many people wanted to buy, and then you had an opportunity to buy it, and you wouldn't get pushed out if you weren't the first 3,000, right? But what I've noticed over the last couple of years is that Limited Run has sort of split their focus, especially with the Nintendo releases, between doing physical releases of old and remastered games from previous generations, and then doing physical releases of current games that are digital only, and maybe get a physical release if Limited Run decides to take on that cost. Do you find that building this library of retro games for the Switch is paying off with a new generation, or do you think it's just asking people to rebuy the same games they already own?
There's a bit of the rebuy, but when they provide extra cool little trinkets and toys and stuff like that that come with it, yeah, you're rebuying something you already have digitally. I'll tell you, I was just at Limited Run's.
Not that I would know anything about that. I mean,
yeah, or I got this Atari set. When I got the Atari set of 1977 and 78 games when I was out there at Limited Run's headquarters, and I saw the focus of what they're doing. We've got an article coming out on it. I've got to write it of just their philosophy on things, and both them locally with Limited Run and the Embracer Group that owns them are a bunch of archivists. Yeah. They want to get this stuff in the can. They want to get it saved forever. They want to get it so that, it'll last. So, it's making money, but I haven't heard a lot of people that are really complaining too much. I like how they're making more of their releases. Yeah, you can buy the big set of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure game with a skateboard and a shirt and all the other cool stuff that you could get with it.
Yeah.
But then you can also buy just the game.
Yeah.
You could buy the Tecmo, whatever heck it is, that comes with a cool toy and a helmet and a lightsaber and whatever else. But then you can also buy just the game.
I don't have them on display right now, but I absolutely bought the Ultimate Collector's Edition for Shredder's Revenge, the new Ninja Turtle game from the folks.
So what all came with the Ultimate Edition?
Oh my God! There's like a little miniature arcade game. There's a shadow box with some custom printed artwork from the game. There's I think like postcards with game artwork on it. There's a couple other things. It's not right in front of me, but along with Shredder's Revenge is a good example of a sort of modern game that almost didn't get a physical release until Limited Run took it on, and then they released not only standard copies, but then they had a collector's copy, and then they had the ultimate one, which is the one I dropped way too much money on. But then also you have games like the No More Heroes series. No More Heroes 1 and 2 both got collector's edition releases from Limited Run, and those were games on the Wii. In fact, those are two of my favorite games on the Wii back in the Wii days, almost 20 years ago, 15 plus years ago. And so as soon as I saw No More Heroes 1 and 2 getting collector's edition releases from Limited Run, I jumped at those. And I've got those sitting in a box where they're safe. I don't have a good way to display them right now, but I have those. And those I think are an excellent example of taking an old game, re-releasing it for the Switch and giving it new life via a new collector's edition with some add-on stuff, because the add-on stuff is super fun, right?
That's what you just reminded me of. At a Classic Game Fest, me and my wife bought Wii Fit and a Wii Fit board. It was $12.
Awesome.
We got both games in a Wii Fit board. We're gonna hook up because I want to get in better shape, and my wife's already in better shape.
Sure.
So, but yeah, how we're going to replicate, stuff like the Wii in future stuff, that'll be kind of funky. Yeah, with I don't know, but yeah, ideal stuff. I mean, games that I remember from the past. I'd love to see Ultima have more stuff done on it. Wizardry was picked up by the Digital Eclipse people. If you've seen what they did with Wizardry for the Switch and for some of the other stuff, there's a lot of cool stuff being pulled up into the modern sense of ways to play it. Plus, I love ways to play the old games in the old format, stuff like Antstream and some iArcade there for a while. Even though they faded away with stuff, the arcade one-up stuff's okay. Yeah, we're in a very golden period of retro gaming right now. It is those of us in our 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s that are remembering when we were in high school and how we played games.
And now we have the disposable income to be able to do something about it.
After Mom sold all of our games off when we moved off to college, we're buying them back. I'm up to 95 games for my Intellivision. I think I only had 10 originally back in the 80s. I've got 95 of them now, and I'm just going crazy.
Again, another story I've told in a previous episode, but famously I sold a Sega CDX and all of my Genesis and Sega CD games for $150 in a newspaper ad so that I could buy a Nintendo 64 and a copy of Mario 64. And as much as I love the video game Mario 64, and believe me, I loved that game, to this day, I think selling my Sega CDX is one of my biggest regrets in gaming.
Was the CDX the smaller one? Oh, wow.
Bought one new off of
those are about $700, $800 nowadays.
Someone broke into my parents' house when I was about 12 and stole my Sega Genesis and a bunch of games. And to replace all that stuff, we got an insurance check. My mom literally walked me into an EB Games and said, okay, tell me which one you want, because we got to replace the stuff that was stolen. And not only did they steal my Sega Genesis, they also stole my CD player. I had a brand new Sony Discman that I just got for my birthday that year. And then like 2 weeks later, it was stolen. So, I walked into an EB Games, pointed right at the Sega CDX, said, I want that one. And she just threw down the credit card, and it was amazing. It was kind of amazing. Like, it was terrible to have, a thief break into our house. By the way, they caught the guy and they got most of our stuff back. But having a thief break into your house and then having all that stuff stolen, like, the one silver lining was getting that insurance check and then going shopping with that insurance check. It was kind of awesome. So that's, I mean, that's one of those things that, like, as adults, I think that we have an opportunity now that we have the income, we have the means. A lot of that stuff is still out there and still available, albeit, pricing accessibility is fluid depending on your market, depending on availability, that kind of thing. But for the most part, most of us can rebuild our childhood game collections now that we're adults. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about growing up in the time that we did and being adults in the time that we are now.
And what you're saying about the pricing, it really widely varies. The first about 50 games I got for my Atari collection cost me around a total about $100. Yeah. And the first 50 games I got for my Intellivision cost around $100. And then you get into the weird stuff. So yeah, it's a toss up. Atari and Intellivision are usually found in buckets for people to dig through, as compared with stuff from your earlier generations. Yeah, those come a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's funny because, like, like with the Nintendo Switch, I really love the Switch console because of the collectability of it and because the catalog is so deep physically. Last I checked, they had something like, it was like 1,300 plus games or something, or 1,600 plus games. Like, there's a lot of games that are physically available for the Switch. I will never collect them all, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But man, the idea of, having a system where you can collect the games that you want, that you're going to play, that you're going to enjoy, like, that's really what I think, for me, the collecting side is all about. Like, do you feel, and let me spin this, because I've already kind of talked about this in past episodes. Let me spin this back onto you then. Do you feel like there's enough organizations like John Hancock's museum that he's trying to get started, or like the Video Game Museum out of Texas, that are preserving, like Limited Run? You mentioned Limited Run, organizations that are preserving these games, like, do you feel like at some point there's going to be enough of those that collecting complete systems isn't really on us as casual gamers?
Yeah, another one to mention, by the way, if you're ever up in upstate New York and Rochester, The Strong has done a great job with this. For instance, they have John Romero's Apple II computer he first programmed on. They have all kinds of stuff like that.
Holy cow.
Yeah. When you're doing Commander Keen and that level of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good amount of groups. I would love to see a little bit more coordination between them on stuff. But yeah, there's a good amount of stuff out there. The thing that we need to get is we need to get this stuff archived in a good form. When I was talking with the new CEO of Atari, Wade Rosen, he said, "Yeah, we own a couple thousand different titles. He doesn't even know what some of them are, and even if they have original copies of all of them, so it's like if the person owns the rights to the game doesn't have a copy of it, we need to get that stuff out there. Even some of these games that guys at Galloping Ghost, Doc Mack and the gang, that they had the only one of the circuit board of a game, they need to get that dumped off, not so we can steal and play it, just so we have a copy of it in the digital world. Yeah, it needs to be preserved. If it's just a bunch of microchips shoved on a board and there's only one of them, one copy of something is not a copy. That's an original. It needs to be put out there. Like when you're backing up computer files, if you only have it in two places, that's not safe enough. You need to have it in multiple places. There needs to be, Indiana Jones, it belongs in a museum level care, shoved off in a box somewhere that we know where we can get to
it. That famous scene from the end of
all the boxes.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, then the scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then don't they do something similar at the Dial of Destiny? I think they shove it off in a warehouse. Have you seen the
something? It was like a nod to the old Raiders. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to take a quick break just so that we can go to the ad spot. Our Vault, our sponsor, Vault 31 Bar. We owe them a little bit of time here on the show. But when we come back, we'll kind of keep this conversation going. We'll have more with Ryan Berger from Old School Gamer Magazine. Hey, y'all, before we get into the regularly scheduled ad spot, I just want to give you a quick update. Not only is the cafe for Vault 31 Bar moving along very, very nicely, but we just had another incredibly successful Lo-Fi VGM at the Vault event this past Saturday, and I got to unveil a little sneak peek of what I'm planning for the DJ booth at the Retro Gaming Expo this year. You can see the photo right here. I am super excited about that, but also I have a whole bunch of other really fun things up my sleeve, many of which I actually was able to share with the live audience at Vault 31 Bar. And those are going to remain secrets at least until the next Lo-Fi event, which is September 14th. That's right. We're doing another Lo-Fi at the Vault. It's going to be September 14th, and it's with our friends at Vault 31 Bar, and I am super, super excited about this one because not only is it going to be probably our best and biggest and most awesome Lo-Fi evening yet, but I have some surprises and some things to share with everybody when that night comes around. And by the way, it's 2 weeks before the Retro Game Expo, so very much looking forward to that. But for now, I will return you to our regularly scheduled sponsored segment with a massive thank you to my friends at Vault 31 Bar. Folks, this episode has once again been sponsored by my friends at Vault 31 Bar. Just 10 minutes north of the Portland airport, Vault 31 is a video game themed bar built for absolutely everyone who loves gaming and geek culture. They offer an incredible selection of beverages and signature cocktails alongside tons of PC and console games available to play. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with David from Vault 31 Bar, who provided the latest update on their remodel and their upcoming all-ages cafe space.
Our walk-in just got here, which is one of our biggest issues we've had with the bar already, is we just don't have enough cold storage.
You were like running out of stuff all the time, and that's because
all the time. Yeah, it's the cafe solves a lot of our issues, and our biggest thing is we've outgrown our little fishbowl, so to speak. We did a huge kitchen remodel that we did not anticipate being as successful as it was. Like we created these little burgers, and they're flying out of here. People complain that we run out of stuff too fast, is because we just simply can't store enough of it. And so this fixes that now. And so the popularity of the burgers will hopefully continue, and we'll be able to sling these things out in larger quantities.
In addition to being an amazing and welcoming geeky culture space, Vault 31 has also become the home of my monthly Lo-Fi VGM event, and this weekend was our best Lo-Fi evening yet. The Lo-Fi event has been a big hit, and I truly think part of the reason for that success is that I picked the right venue. We've had giveaways courtesy of Curaga Records, and the team at Vault 31 has even gone so far as to cook up some food specials to fit the theme of the night. If you want to find out more about Vault 31 and what they have going on in the coming months, well, I'll let David tell you the best way to do that. Listen, David, where can people follow Vault 31 Bar on socials? Like, where can people find you? Like, how does that work?
We're Vault 31 Bar and everything. Best thing to do is actually just go to vault31bar.com. It's going to link you to our social. It's going to link you to our Discord. We have an awesome Discord community. You'll see updates on there, all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, head to the website. I know it's a little old school, but it's like our link tree or whatever people use nowadays.
Thanks, David, and thank you for everything you've done for this show. Now, back to the interview. So, Ryan, I know that we mentioned that last week you were at a show. You've got several shows coming up in the summer before you go back to teaching high school in the fall. Is there a specific show that you think Old School Gamer magazine does really well at? Is there one particular standout experience that you've had recently at one of the retro gaming expos?
Well, I've got to give credit where it all started. I had been going to the Midwest Gaming Classic for 5 or 6 years, got to know Dan Lusnes casually back when it was a small show of under 5,000 people or under 2,000 people. It was in a hotel. It was crammed in every little corner of what you consider like a wedding hotel. Imagine a hotel where they have 2 DJable facilities for wedding receptions. Okay, it's like right there. There could be 2 weddings going on at the same time. Right. They took over those rooms. They took over a tent. They kept going from there. I'd gone to that show a couple times, more than a couple times. I then went down to Classic Game Fest in August of 2017, 2018, everywhere the math figures out to being. Saw it, started talking with people, including Walter and Billy, about magazines, talked to a bunch of the authors there, and it already started stirring up the idea of doing a magazine.
Okay.
So I started a magazine off that. First show that I bring the magazine is the Portland show. We have a booth in the back. That's where I met you. That's where we talked shop about all kinds of, stuff. As you were trying to tear down your gear, I wanted to talk, but my head was just spinning because I saw so many possibilities.
Sure.
And the Portland show of then is half the size of what it is now. So we got that show, Midwest Gaming Classic, Long Island Retro Show. I have a blast that one. I mean, there are so many of these, and then there's so many of the smaller ones that are basically just a swap meet with a couple celebrities at it. And even those are fun.
Yeah.
If I could be in 2 places every weekend, if I want to go to all these shows, I try to cut it down to just 10 or 15 a year. That's still crazy.
Only 10 or 15 a year.
Yes. So let's see. Coming up this fall, just the ones I'm going to. There's Portland. There's Cleveland. There's one in Chicago I can't get to. I'm trying to get down to one in Free Play, Florida, down in Orlando area.
Okay.
And a couple other ones. I mean, it's just, there's so many of these, and that's where we really built our magazine up. Yes, we got subscribers at day one when we announced it because no one had ever heard of what we had done, or they'd heard of it and we're excited about it. But what's really worked well for us is getting out there and meeting people. We're literally working on a game plan right now. This is super secret stuff. Don't nobody watch this and tell anybody about it.
Don't worry, nobody watches this show.
We're coming up with a reward for people that come to a con that are a paid subscriber of ours and introduce a friend to us. Come up and just say, this is the magazine I've been getting for a couple of years. I've been telling you about. You really should get it. And we're going to hand them like a free keychain or free swag or something. Just as a thank you for coming by. And literally the first show we're going to do that at will be Portland.
Hey, that's not bad, man. I like that.
If you're one of the approximately 1,000 paid subscribers that get more than just the basic stuff, the free version of it from us, you're going to stop by our booth, pick up a free keychain or something. Just as a thank you for being who you are and passing on a friend. The way we've grown, well, we haven't grown as much as I want to, but the way we have grown is by friends introducing to friends. And the way I meet people and grow the business is the same kind of thing. Yes, we had met before, we hadn't talked a lot, but it was me on a drive with Derek down to Texas that reintroduced us together, and that's why we're talking right now. So.
And Derek, by the way, he's going to be on an upcoming, like, very, very soon. I'm not sure what order I'm going to air these episodes, but just, a little peek behind the curtain for the show. Derek and I have a recording session scheduled for later this afternoon that's been pushed back a couple of weeks. And he's the agent from Malice Media that's been responsible for connecting me with all of the folks from the Mortal Kombat original cast.
And that is one fun group to hang out at.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, at Portland, they're going to be there. I'm not giving away any secrets there. Oh, yeah, that's already been announced. In the ad.
No, we're very excited.
Let's put it this way. The stories get even better later in the night.
Yeah. I can see it.
And a couple of the guys, a couple of the guys will get out and sing, and oh my gosh, it's a blast.
That is one thing I haven't been asking them about, is which one of you can sing. I've already recorded. I've recorded with Daniel. I've recorded with Hosong. I recorded with Carlos. I've got Liz scheduled for later in the week. And then I just need to chat with Rich, hopefully soon.
Divizio. You don't have the singer coming out. I guess he'll come out for a future one.
Is that Tony?
Yes. Anthony Marquez sings. It's what's the name of the band? I forget. Yeah, he does cover tunes and kind of a little bit of a Bon Jovi vibe. He's the main one that sings.
Amazing.
But yeah, Anthony Marquez. We'll get him in future years. Once this Mortal Kombat thing is a success out there, we'll have to bring out some more of the party.
Anthony Marquez, for folks who aren't completely familiar with his work, he was doing a little bit of work on the original Mortal Kombat, but ended up getting hurt, and so he couldn't be in the game. But then came back for Mortal Kombat 2 and played Kung Lao. And so he's part of that whole friend group that originated the first Mortal Kombat and then continued on their work with the second Mortal Kombat. And I'd still, even though he's not coming to Portland, I would still love to interview him just as part of the series that I've been doing. Hopefully I'll get a chance to chat with him. But
Kung Lao and the Scorpions.
Dan Casina did Scorpion, Sub-Zero.
No, I'm saying that the name of the band is Kung Lao and the Scorpions.
Oh, that's his band.
Marquez's band that does all the cover tunes. And believe me, he's a blast. They get into a whole Mortal Kombat techno, Mortal Kombat, all that stuff. Oh, it's great. Doing big kicks and yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, hey, why not, right? If it's fun on stage and people dig it, So you travel around, you do all of these shows, trying to make people aware of Old School Gamer Magazine, trying to drum up more interest in a subscriber base so that you can continue to publish Old School Gamer Magazine both digitally and physically. And as you're going around to doing these shows, what's been the overall response from a lot of folks that you've chatted with about like the idea of having a new modern magazine to collect in 2024?
Surprise. Just, why are you doing this? It's cool. Let's get going with it. Or other people that just kind of, the people that get it, definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
There's other people just like, oh, okay, it's cool. I mean, I love when they come up, they come up to me and say, sort of like Nintendo Power and AGM and stuff. It's like, yeah, similar, but you don't have to, it's not going to have the tips and tricks like they used to have in them because, we find those out on the internet. The goal of the magazine is to do something that's not being done anywhere else. When I looked out there was people doing great podcasts, great YouTube channels, great material everywhere else, but no one was doing something in a magazine format. The closest thing was a blog that they talk about things, but nothing again in the format of what we're doing. So we figured we'd do this, and then we'll try to work with people like yourself on spreading the word through the other angles. I'm a big fan of watching, video game pickers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that material, watching these detailed, hour-long documentary pieces on one game and things, but no one's doing what we're doing. So we're trying to find our niche as to what we can do better in the print format that no one else is doing. And we seem to be doing okay with it.
Yeah, I wonder, because I'm familiar with the magazine. Of course, you generously offered me a subscription that first day that we met. And I've collected several issues over the years. I think they're still being delivered to my old address, so I got to check in with my old roommate because the last time he had some mail for me, there was a couple issues in there.
I will make a note to check on it. DJ Switch's address. Okay.
Yeah, I think you and I need to revisit that subscription thing. But I know that one of the things you were doing early on that I thought was really, really cool was you were including some posters of the artwork. And, you know, just sort of to make the individual issues a little bit more collectible, something just kind of add in that sort of tangible thing, not unlike the limited run stuff that we were talking about earlier in the episode. Do you find that your readers respond more to the collectability side of it or more to the content side of it?
I think more the content side of it. I mean, the posters, which I've got a whole wall of them here, we stopped doing it after 2 years, or 2.5 years, because it was costing as much as, I think, 16 to 20 pages of the magazine to print the poster. And I wanted to have the content instead. Yeah. So I've still got tons of posters. Maybe I'll bring a set of posters out to decorate your game room up with. I think it's more the content. I do have some people that literally will read it digitally and take the original magazine, which comes in a nice sleeve, and never open it. They read it because the digital version will come out around the first of the month. The print version will show up in their mailbox 8 to 10 days later. Yeah. They'll read it all digitally instead. I have one subscriber that gets 2 copies of every issue. Well, he subscribed twice, one so he can read it, one so he can save it.
That sounds like a game collector.
Yeah, I've seen copies of the magazines for sale at cons, secondary sales, up next to like a Game Pro, how to win at Super Mario Bros. 3 and how to win at Gradius and Super Nintendo tips and tricks. There's an old school gamer up there. I saw that this past weekend.
So they're already hitting the secondhand market at these expos and conventions?
They've been seeing that hitting the secondhand market. Everybody wants a copy of number 1. Which I gave out 1,500 copies of at Portland. And I think a bunch of them got dumped by people that didn't care. People were paying like $30, $40 for issue number 1. I have my 2 copies. That's all I've got.
I have an accordion file with, I at one point in my old office, in my old house, this is probably, I don't know, 8 years ago now. I went through and cleaned up my old office, and I got an accordion like one of those like accordion file folder things, and I kept all of my magazines in that accordion file. So I still have all of my early issues with the posters and everything. Yeah. Kept in an accordion file. I gotta look. I'm like 90% sure my issue 1 is in there.
Yeah.
The one that you gave me.
Yeah, because we brought a ton of copies. The first year we handed out copies of whatever the current issue was to our booth, and then we moved to handing out a special issue that we did just for the cons. That was shorter, and we could print a ton more copies of it. So we moved to that kind of format.
So on the topic of the content, though, and let me ask you this, because I know we're getting a little bit short on time here. Do you find that the Old School Gamer magazine audience is more interested in specifically retro focused content around the classic games from the Atari, you know, let's say the 8 to 16-bit era? Or do you find that there's a niche for within that audience for coverage of modern interpretations of those games? For example, stuff that's being re-released on the Switch, like we were talking about, or stuff that's being, reported to the arcade 1-up machines from 30 years ago, that kind of thing. Like, do you find that there's more interest in the sort of like coverage of the older stuff being looked at through a new lens, or more interest in coverage of the new stuff that's coming out now that is designed to target that old school audience?
Well, the first half of our magazine is driven by almost completely the past. There might be some reference in there to how you can play it currently. The reviews of new hardware, of new platforms, of other stuff is probably 20% of the magazine.
Okay.
the advertising that drives these things, that pays a lot of our bills, is almost, it's not old Activision ads by any means. It's people on new platforms and doing new things with stuff, or like this GG Retro box that sends stuff to you every month.
Yeah,
on things, those kinds of things, and AntStream and the other similar platforms. So it's a toss. People want to hear the older stories, but they also want to find out new ways of playing the stuff. I mean, I can see. I heard a story which I'm going to get documented for the magazine about a boy and his blob, and how the guys from former Activision made that original game in 5 weeks. Okay,
yeah.
Using their dev kit, making the Nintendo deadline. Great story told at Classic Game Fest. And I understand the game's been re-released for the Switch. It's not the old one being ported up, but it's the same basic game. I would love to see a review of the old game right next to a review of the new Switch game, and comparisons and stuff. How different are they? I mean, Pitfall is obviously a totally different game if they were to release it now.
Right.
Stuff that's out there. It'd probably be like one of those running games where you just keep on running and jump and run and jump.
The infinite running. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd probably be something like that. And then there's other games that have been totally spun different directions. The new Yars Revenge, or Yars whatever, the new Yar game that Atari put out is totally different concept, but it happens in the same universe, they say. So there's reinventions of games that are taken to a totally different ballpark.
I think the new Pitfall game is actually called Subway Surfers, if you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kidding, of course I'm kidding.
But yeah, sometimes games, the game is taken to a totally different ballpark and style of gameplay, but it started out with what it started with. Like the Recharge series from Atari is taking the original game and adding a ton more to it. And those are still in the same vein. Yet some of this other stuff is a different genre completely.
I don't even know how many times I've bought a Sonic the Hedgehog collection for a console. I'm pretty sure I had it for the 360. I'm pretty sure I had it for the PS4. And I know I definitely just bought another one for the Nintendo Switch. So like, every time a new Sonic the Hedgehog collection releases with, updates to the old Sonic 1, 2, and 3, Sonic and Knuckles, all that, every time that there's a release of, like Disney did a collection of the old Aladdin, Jungle Book, and Lion King games for the Switch, I can see definite value in attracting a modern audience through coverage of those retro specific re-releases and modern releases. But I also see, and I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if maybe you can speak to this a little bit, just in terms of like how the magazine views this side of the conversation. But there's so much new hardware coming out, from the Miu Mini stuff, the GPi stuff for the Raspberry Pi folks, the Analog Pocket, the Retron series from Hyperkin. There you go. Don't even get me started on what is that, the Evercade?
Yeah,
that's the So,
the Hyper Megatech little Evercade. I've got Intellivision on it.
So, and see the Evercade stuff is Retro Rob and I had an amazing conversation about the Evercade and a lot of what they're doing. So how does the magazine approach this wave of retro hardware and all of the technical stuff that goes into these, like, in some cases $200 plus devices that are designed specifically to emulate the old CRTs and emulate the old hardware so that you can play real cartridges on them? Yeah,
well, I bought myself an Atari 2600 plus. That's taking the old Atari games and making them up to HDMI.
I think it was you, John Hancock, John Riggs, and maybe like 3 other people that bought that thing.
They sold a lot of them. I'll tell you that. A lot of those people bought the VGS.
Oh, okay.
A couple years before. We cover the platform. We don't recover the games by any means, unless they had to change them somehow with stuff.
Right.
And yeah, it's all the convenience of playing a different format. There's been some junky stuff that's come out, and we're not out here to rip stuff. And I won't we won't write a really nasty review on something. We just will tell the publisher saying, and I had this in the DJ industry. I had people that send us new DJ controller boards that were just crap. And I'd say, I really don't want to write this up in the magazine because I don't want you to get too mad at me. And you can imagine the manufacturers, which ones I'm talking about, that were just junk or speakers. There's couple companies in LA that release some speakers. It's like, geez, people, never mind. Let's not go there.
Specifically, I'm laughing because, no joke, the end of this week, I'm turning in a video to a DJ outlet that I work for about controllers, and specifically about which controllers are the best for which software platforms in the DJ space.
Yeah.
And boy, that has not changed. Some of those controllers are amazing little pieces of hardware, and some of them really aren't.
And it's tough to tell until someone gets into it. Same kind of thing on some of these things. I mean, some of the stuff you can buy on Amazon or AliExpress or Temu, illegal as heck and pieces of crap.
Yeah.
I wish Atari and a couple of these other companies would go to the Amazons and stuff, say, stop selling this crap. It's got my licensed product on it.
Yeah.
And just start deleting it, because if we're going to have a good platform, if we're going to have these games out there legally, we got to do it right. Remember in the DJ industry, Napster days, okay?
Sure.
Everybody remembers Napster. It's how you could download all kinds of free music. But what did that lead to? That led to iTunes and be able to buy individual songs for 99 cents and not have to go buy the whole album.
Yeah.
Because some bride wants some off track, and this is an actual story. I had to buy a box set of some Bob Dylan box set for $80 to get one song off of it for her wedding reception. She was paying me very, very well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably $1,000 gig, but I had to buy that box set just to get that one song legally. Yeah. Now, iTunes, not as much iTunes, but now we have the on-demand song stuff. We need to have some better legal platforms, and they need to go after the people that are selling these hard drives full of 10,000 ROM files. Yeah, I have all that stuff. I don't play with it. So okay, I'm done ranting.
No, it's all good, man. I had to pay $40 for a George Strait box set because that was the only way I could get this one song digitally.
Yeah, well, now brides will send us link to really bad YouTube videos, and they want us to play that at their wedding. It's like, well, okay, straight from YouTube. Here comes their first dance.
Yeah, and that comes with its own legal stuff. You absolutely are not allowed to play YouTube stuff in a public venue. But obviously that's not why we're here today. You and I can do a whole separate podcast about all that.
Yeah, but the whole thing on ROMs.
But and the point being that even though there's modern retro focused hardware, you have to be careful. You have to be careful as a professionally published magazine what you cover, what you endorse, and I completely get that. Obviously, there's been a lot of coverage on the Analog Pocket. There's been a lot of coverage on the Evercade stuff. Those are two devices that are, in the market that are being sold legally. And so you're probably okay there. But then, you get into, like you said, some of the Temu and AliExpress stuff. You don't know. You don't.
Yeah, you walk around a flea market and they have these little things that look like an NES Mini, and they're loaded with 10,000 songs. Same ones they sold at malls 10 years ago. And that if it's a $30 machine, it has every game you can imagine, and for the NES, it's illegal.
Yeah.
Just common sense tells you there's no way that can be done.
Yeah. And unfortunately that's, I completely understand that, like, from a company standpoint, like, they don't want their IPs out there being distributed this way, and the the legality of that. And honestly, just never mind the legality, the cost of fighting something like that has got to be astronomical. And absolutely a fool's errand. But at the same time, I really appreciate just being somebody who, I turned 40 this year. And, being somebody of that, mid-millennial generation, to be able to enjoy little slices of my childhood, be able to enjoy some of those memories that are buried deep in the back of my brain pan, I never get tired of that. And I think that's what a lot of our industry is built around, is that nostalgia.
Gotcha.
Well, listen, Ryan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to hang out with me today. I really, really appreciate it. Where can folks find you on the internet?
Oldschoolgamer.com is the basic website. We don't do a ton of social media stuff, but you can find me out there on Facebook. Because I'm old, so I don't do the new stuff. I still have a MySpace page if they let me. Let's call it that. But yeah, oldschoolgamer.com. Otherwise, see us upcoming this September at the Portland Retro Gaming Show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you back at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. It's going to be good to see you again. And do make sure you come by the DJ booth and at least say hi.
I'll give you a couple requests.
I'm super down for that.
Hey, man, I can DJ too. Let me take it to
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that off air. I think we're but in seriousness, man, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. I appreciate it.
We're good.
I've got to give a huge thank you to Ryan Berger from Old School Gamer Magazine for hanging out with me today. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your time. And if you want to see more of this conversation or any of the other conversations that I've had on this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX, where signing up for the Patreon not only supports me directly and helps me pay for a lot of the software tools and equipment that I use to create this show, but it also will get you access to my Lost Levels. I have small segments of these conversations that are Patreon exclusive, and they are all available. Every single episode up to this point, I have recorded a little extra something special, and they're all available at patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX. So you can support me and also get a little bit extra pick up and play while you're at it. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. As always, please consider subscribing here at youtube.com/DJSwitchPDX. Follow me on Instagram and facebook.com/DJSwitchPDX. And as always, I will see you on the next one.